We can commence session 2, and we welcome the education officials, deputations, and individuals. Regarding the BCA, you can wear headphones and choose 0 for the floor. 1 is Cantonese, 2 is English, and 3 is Putonghua channel. If necessary, you can ask the staff for help. So deputations and individuals need to take note. You can provide written submission, and you can give an oral presentation, but you are not covered by the powers and privileges of LegCo. And I'd also like you to take note that members of the public who are in the public gallery, there is a notice regarding rules of conduct, and the Secretariat has issued you with a copy, and you can also find a copy on your table. So members of the public in the public gallery, if you don't have a copy, you can seek a copy from our LegCo security staff. So I'll invite the deputation to speak. Each person can speak 3 minutes, but when the bell rings, you need to stop, and please be concise. If you have further supplementation, you can do so in writing. So first of all, I invite Mr. Pt2. I'm a spokesperson from DAB, Pt2, and after media coverage, we have vilified the government 2017-18 decision to promote the BCA, that is the so-called fine-tuned TCA. The BCA is just a tool to help education. Now, in our contact with parents, they were concerned about TCA, and there might be over-coaching under this system. There was undue pressure. But as the DAB has repeatedly stated, we don't want to see over-drilling, over-coaching, and we have reflected our views to the Education Bureau. The new BCA has some improvements over the old TCA, but can it really ensure that there won't be over-coaching? It's still too early to tell. Some parents in schools have doubts about the BCA, so we urge the government to undertake 4 measures to, when they implement the scheme. They should include these points. First, you need to respect professional decisions. It should be school-based, and you should allow schools and parents to decide whether students participate in the scheme. Point 2, you need to ensure that there shouldn't be over-coaching and drilling, and the government needs to do monitoring. Third, the government needs to comply strictly with the principle, and it should be confidential. They should not rate schools. And fourth, the government needs to do more promotion. They need to explain to the schools and parents. They need to alleviate concerns, and that would conclude my speech. Next. Mr. Jiu Yan Loy. Well, I'm from the Labour Party, so whether it's the TSA or BCA, parents are worried about their kids are being drilled excessively to take these tests. Now, in the community, when we visit the tenants in subdivided units, they have to do this very reluctantly. Rich parents can arrange for kids to take tutorial classes, but grassroots families, they don't have good living conditions, or they might have long work hours, they don't have time to look after the kids, and the education that choices available to them are traditional schools. They can't afford education from elite schools, and they also, when they're worried about TSA grades, there will be less and less students enrolling in elite schools. Then they need to face something. They want better grades from the BCA, and that creates a vicious cycle. So tests and homework is modeled after the TSA questions, and they are drilled and coached excessively. So when they prepare for tests, they have to undergo excessive drilling and coaching. They are the disadvantaged. They can't attend tutorial schools. They cannot receive better education. And rich students, they might be in DSE or international schools, and they can ignore the TCA. They don't have to worry that their school will be affected by this test. So the reason we object to the TSA is because the whole education policy is a meaningless repetition of drilling. There's no real learning. So since we have so much educational resources, why can't we deploy it in real potential development? Mr. WONG. Thank you, Chairman. I'm a practicing education psychologist. The BCA, if it can help teachers improve teaching, as a frontline worker, when I provide opinion to teachers, I think the Education Bureau is mystifying the effects of TCA. Well, every year we have Chinese comprehension. We ask students to choose some phrases and fill in the blanks to see if they can understand what has been taught. So I'd like to ask, if the students can't find that phrase, what does that mean? Well, from a professional standpoint, they might have poor reading, they don't understand the words, they might have poor comprehension, or perhaps the whole article, they don't understand the sentences in the article. Sometimes it's very simple. They have a weak visual inspection skills. They might know the word, but they can't find it. So it might not be the test. We can only say that the students have a weak comprehension, but why are they weak? They cannot identify the reason of that. So if you want to improve education and teaching and teachers, that is a big question. As a matter of fact, teachers need to observe students. So through classroom learning or tailor-made tests, they need to understand the students' learning difficulties. And I think teachers can do that and are willing to do that. So if BCA, if it is a useful aid to improve teaching, that cannot be established. And finally, what use does a TCA have? It is just to compare students among students, or you can even compare the performance of different schools. That is its only use. But the biggest problem is if they want to compare students across schools, then it becomes a competition between schools. That's why we have coaching, and that's why we have the TSA deviating from its original intention. So, if the Education Bureau is spending 80 million on the TSA, this money, if it were spent in other areas, an example such as the QSIP developed by the CU, we appreciate these schemes. The money is spent and we get actual feedback. Mr. Chen Jizhong. I'm from the Advanced Teachers Association. Now, as a frontline teacher, when students and parents object to TCA, well, I would agree with professionals, whether it's TSA or BCA, an objective assessment tool, but any blade will rust over time. No matter how good the tool is over time, after it deviates from its original goal, there's a lot of damage, especially when you don't place it in an appropriate position. There are already some people saying the TSA should be a progressive assessment, but you'll use it as a comprehensive assessment. You allow schools to compare, to compete. That would take an already distorted teaching environment and you further distort it. So, under the pressure of decreasing enrollment and shutting down the schools, when we have external assessment, we have government officials mentioning to principals or school sponsoring bodies that the school performance isn't that good. So the TSA, if it continues to play the role as a competition tool, we feel that is not ideal. So no matter how good the intention was, even though it was a good tool, but it's now a sword hanging over the teachers and school, the principal's head. And if there's already a lack of trust, if it's changed its course, then the government, as parents said, they should take this TCA, BCA and suspend it. Now, even if they can't do so, I think the new term of government will. I hope that some practical officials that will take up the post of the Secretary of Education, they should issue a notice to all schools and allow schools to ask parents, will their children participate or not? And in the last few months, the parents have been setting up poll stations, and we might provide templates for boycotting the test. The government can do a lot, and teachers don't want to assist in this test. I am Lam Wenji. First of all, I'd like to say that we had issued a report recently, and the report indicates that from 2014 to 16 we had a spike in calls for assistance. We can see that the primary students are not happy. Second thing I want to share, I'm a practicing social worker, and we're doing a mental health program for youth, and in my assistance cases we have kids with emotional problems, behavioral problems, and in one case it was only 9 years old and they already are self-inflicting wounds, and I have a group of very diligent students. They work very hard, they listen to their parents, they attend tutorial class, and they have no spare time and they're under a lot of pressure. So aside from students, I'm also working with parents. The parents are under a lot of pressure. One parent, I've only taken up this case for 6 months, so whenever they are disputes between the kids, I ask the parent to WhatsApp me. I already have 32 pages worth of A4 text messages. So the mothers are under a lot of pressure and kids are under a lot of pressure. So I believe we have a lot of people here who are parents. They have kids. So as parents, you love your kids, and I think you struggle. Should we force them to do more homework, or should we let them play? And the parents I meet, a lot of them are at loggerheads with their kids over homework and studying. And ultimately, the parents are heartbroken. And when kids hear the word school, they don't feel like going to school. They're under a lot of pressure. So as far as I know, from 2012, our parent association had called for scrapping of the TSA, and they had called for what our education policy is doing. They want children to have a happy childhood. So BCA, it's not just a matter of easy or difficult questions. It gives rise to a coaching culture. When TSA was implemented, it was just supposed to be an assessment, but ultimately, because of competition, or it had deviated from its original purpose and led to over excessive coaching. Just now Mr. Eddie said that we need to take care of our kids' futures, and for all the speakers here, they are concerned about the kids' future. So let's suspend TCA. We don't want the children to have too much pressure.
Next one, Mr. Zhang. Good evening. I'm from a parents group. I'd like to ask a question. Why is it that Secretary Ng does not attend this session? He won't be here for the next session as well. As a secretary, he's obliged to listen to people's views, even though his deputy is here. Anyway, I just don't understand. I have a child who's in primary school. My kid is taking BCA this year. Many media and magazines have interviewed us. But I'm grateful that my kid's school approved our application to spare my daughter from taking the test. She can go to the library instead. She's very inquisitive. She likes to learn. She likes to listen to new things and learn new things and listen to stories. So as a parent, I would try to maintain and cater to her curiosity. Sitting here, I'm not talking anything bad or saying anything bad about school. I just want to point to the problem with BCA. Many retired principals, serving principals, scholars. Actually, a quote in the papers I have in my hand, they cited evidence on sampling, taking samples of students who've taken the test. Yesterday, at the City Forum, the scholars on your side, Professor Hao Kit-tai, said that if the test does not take down students' names, and nor do they take down schools' names, then he would accept it. He said he would support that. Another thing is, why is it that the test has to be taken by all students? Why can't parents choose whether to do it or not? Last time when we met with Zhang Kin-chung, Matthew Zhang, staff from Education Bureau, told me directly that students have to go to school on the day anyway, so why don't they take the test? But why are parents not given the choice? I really feel angry with it. I'm really upset about it. And Secretary Ng also told the media that the parents are not professional, but we've done a lot of homework. Have you looked at our homework? Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Zhang. Next, Civic Parties, Mr. Hong Ling Fai. Yes, can you let me play a recording which is related to the assessment? It's related to today's topic, right? Okay, you can play it.
Right now is to focus on drilling problem. Is it because of the too much homework? Is it because of misreading of certain messages from schools, or is it because of just public perception?
This recording I just played actually was sent by Secretary Ng in 2015 in response to a question from the press on drilling for TSA. In looking at the assessment, BCA launched in 2016, expressions of personal experience. As a secondary school teacher myself, I may not be able to give the full mark of 4 to the secretary because his response did not respond to most of the questions readily and naturally. I would have doubts about giving him 3 marks because we wanted a natural expression. Responding to some of the questions hesitantly, maybe you could get 2 marks in that regard. As the Secretary for Education, well, I personally, as an English teacher, with my experience in assessment, I would think that he might not, in the assessment of verbal ability, meet the benchmark. So why would we expect primary students to meet the benchmark? Well, Educational Bureau shelved the TSA 2 years ago, and then a year later the test was resumed. And you said that this is such a research study, but this is just something in disguise. So objectively speaking, I didn't see how this so-called research study has eased parents' worries. So Civic Party thinks that since BCA is a research study, then we should let schools decide whether to join in it or not. Let me give you an analogy. On the street, if you approach for people who are doing a questionnaire survey or you receive phone calls from people doing the questionnaire survey, you have the right to say no and not be put under pressure. But now the Bureau said that if schools wanted to not to take the BCA, then the Bureau will find out from the school the reasons why. Well, you know, this is a kind of pressuring. Civic Party would not deny that Hong Kong needs a set of assessment system to assess our education system, but that shouldn't be TSA or BCA. You can do the study anonymously, and you should also let parents choose whether to let the kids be involved. So Civic Party would propose that firstly, we should shelve BCA for primary 3 students indefinitely, because now we're doing the verbal test, but the written test should be suspended. And we should also re-evaluate how we should assess the effectiveness of education system, and there should be public consultation. Most importantly, schools, children, and parents should decide whether they want to take part in it. Thank you, Mr. Hong. Next one, Mr. Tang Shao Tai. Yes, I'm from the School Parent Cooperation Committee. I have read articles on TSA saying that weighing pigs doesn't mean that we are raising pigs. But the point is, if you don't weigh the pig, how can you know how to adjust your feeds for the pigs? I know weighing pigs doesn't mean it's not the same thing as raising pigs, but still we think that during the process of raising pigs, we need to have regular weighing of pigs and also evaluate the pig's health to adjust the feeds to be given. So we, on behalf of our committee, we expect the Bureau, in setting questions for the test, should adequately test students' ability, and BCA data should be used effectively by educators, including principals and teachers, to improve teaching and learning. And also expect all primary schools to understand the accurate use of data from BCA and TSA, and then to make use of support from the Education Bureau to improve the teaching and learning. If schools feel pressure from the Bureau, then we hope that principals can have adequate knowledge and good attitude to, on the basis of TSA data, try to find out ways to improve teaching, so that with professional support from schools, they can improve on teaching and learning. We also expect principals have adequate knowledge, professional knowledge, to explain to teachers and parents and spare students and the parents unnecessary pressure. In 2016's trial study of TSA, we think that we have reached some of the goals, and now we hope that there can be adequate cooperation between schools and parents to eliminate unnecessary drilling. Sponsoring bodies and Educational Bureau on January 23 this year, they issued a statement to call for or to advocate unnecessary drilling. We want to remove unnecessary drilling through collaborations between all stakeholders. On the whole, schools and parents should make good use of assessment resources to improve teaching and learning. If just because of political reasons or personal feelings or all sorts of mutations of situations that we scrap BCA, that would not be a professional and responsible decision. Chairman, without BCA, well, comparing to the loss of this land, I think that would have a greater damage to students in Hong Kong. Next one, thank you. Next one. I'm from the Kwun Tong Teacher Association, Mr. Lo Ping Chung. We have received lots of information. And last year, after the test was suspended, 20 schools had a trial run of the test similar to TSA. And now that we have the revised version with the new name BCA, well, work has been done on the new test. But what I want to say is that we need to look at the improved version. What is its effect? We don't know what is its effect, and yet now we're saying that we should scrap it. But haven't heard the reasons for opposing the test. People saying that the question is too difficult, and secondly, it caused drilling, and schools compare among themselves. And the biggest problem is even sponsoring bodies, school sponsoring bodies, on the basis of BCA results, decide on the standards of the school. And early on, we called a meeting with various school sponsoring bodies, school and parent representatives, and some university professors. We sat down together. The sponsoring body representatives agreed that they would not use BCA results to determine the standard of the school concerned. And the Bureau also promised that they would not use the results to evaluate schools. So now that with all the modifications made, so why should we oppose BCA? I know parents have said that their kids have much drilling. I am always in contact with parents in Kwun Tong district, parents with schools, parents with children going from primary to secondary school. I talk to them a lot, and the views I heard from them are different from what is reported in the media. And many parents told me that they didn't know or were not aware that the kids had taken the test. So where did the drilling lie? I think various parties are responsible for the drilling. Some parents may play an important role in fostering drilling because parents want to compare, don't want the kids to lose out. But we're saying that we would not take down students' names. So if we don't know the students' names, why would there be any comparison? Some principals told us that the data collected from the test are useful. So if the parents or the school thinks that the test is useful, why don't we trust the test? Because that's just mutual mistrust. So we need to let BCA be done first, and then we see what the effects are like, and then we have the data, and then by using the data, we can see whether we should, continue with it or have further amendments. Some of the members or people present here think that there needs to be some sort of assessment. If we do away with this, what can we have left? So why can't we keep the current assessment system and see what the results are first, and then find out where is the source of the pressure? Thank you. Next one is Mr. Choi Chi-kin. Thank you, Chairman. I'm councillor from the Eastern District Council, Choi Chi-kin. In 2016-17, we had a paper on TSA/BCA. In 2016, we moved a motion which was approved, urging the administration to cancel compulsory participation of primary 3 students in TSA. And in place of that, we should let parents and children choose whether to decide to take part. And in 2017, we submitted another paper opposing compulsory participation in the BCA for P3 students. We urged that all stakeholders' views be heard and the assessment be scrapped. And the administration said in its paper that the Education Bureau and Committee will listen to various views and continue to review and improve on BCA. That is to say that the assessment will be continued. We're not opposed to any sort of assessment. We're just opposed to excessive drilling for the sake of assessment. Why is there so much drilling? It's to do with the Bureau and schools. In 2004, when TSA was launched, on the surface, it seems like there is an assessment to improve teaching and learning. Indeed, the schools or the marks obtained will be used by schools and Education Bureau as a sort of data for report cards. And some schools may not be able to get additional resources because of the marks. So therefore, the schools transfer the pressure onto 8 or 9-year-old students and their parents. And in Hong Kong, those who are opposed to TSA-BCA number a lot. And society has a lot of views, and it's a very controversial issue, and yet the present term of government insists on having it. But the incoming chief executive says that the assessment will be shelved and be reviewed. So there seems to be a discontinuity in government policy. So the public is really confused. Should we support or oppose the policy? So I think the Education Bureau has ignored public opinions. We urge the administration to suspend BCA, review it further, and to avoid having any sort of assessment that would stifle students' growth and development. Let's not put excessive pressure and drilling on students. Please return happy childhood to our students. Remember, we're talking about 8 or 9-year-old students. Also, like you to know that UNICEF says that we should give children at least 1 hour of play every day. But how many children in Hong Kong have such time for play? Well, the secretary is not here. We think that if you love the kids, you should. It's not about giving them Disneyland, but you have to give your heart to them. Next one is Miss Kwan Oi Bing. Thank you. I'm from the Tuen Mun parents group. In the past, many have said or compared TSA to health check for students. But let's use the analogy of immunization. Well, like polio or all sorts of vaccines could be used to keep children healthy. But all the vaccines used are actually very minor in terms of the pain they cause. Some medical organizations, if they want to have quick vaccinations and use large needles, then that would actually mean unnecessary pain inflicted on children. So parents may be worried that their children will be subject to unnecessary pain. But if that is that the reason why we should just do away with all sorts of vaccination? Or should we ask the medical organizations or Department of Health use any large needles for the sake of vaccination? In English, there's an idiom. Don't throw the baby with the bath water. If you are worried that the systematic assessment will lead to excessive drilling, then why would you also stop collecting useful data? Who don't want the sponsoring bodies or the Education Bureau know the level of our students for the sake of improving teaching and learning? I don't understand. Why is it that you would politicize the whole thing? Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Ms. Kwan. Next one is Lampo Yu. I'm Lampo Yu. I have 3 kids. I'm also a member of PTA. Over the past few years, my eldest son took TSA. And last year, my daughter was bad TSA, and now I have my youngest son who may have to take BCA. And the school he goes to supports BCA. I can see that, like, the school that my son attends does not really have excessive drilling. There's an old saying that as a parent, you always worry about your children, however old they are. So all parents really are concerned, of course. But at this stage, some parents even are becoming over anxious. There are many helicopter parents, monster parents. Sometimes they force their children to learn a lot when they're very small. So now we have the BCA for P3 students. I think for our kids, they would be helpful because for P3 students to have the test, then it's like having a health check. So at some stage, you want to have a health check, right? To know if there are any problems in your body or with your health, and then you can provide the right remedy. So same for our children. Just as someone just said, using the analogy of health check. So having the BCA at P3, that could help enhance the ability of our children. So whether a child is happy or not, there are very factors behind it. Is it that having the BCA will make children unhappy? Well, my eldest son who took TSA, I don't think that he became unhappy because of that, or they didn't like to go into school. So sometimes time management is like squeezing a toothpaste. It all depends on up to how a parent allocates time. You need to set a good example for your children yourself as a parent. There's also a saying that it's all about how you set your own example. If a small child cannot handle a small test like BCA, then what can they do? I mean, it's just a small test at a stage in life. I think it's really no big deal. So why should we say that we should have a blanket approach to just scrap it all together? I think we need to think more about that. Thank you.
多謝大家。
好多。
Thank you, Ms. Leung. Next, Madam Ta Yuk Chen. Good evening. I'm a mother. My older son is in primary 1 and my younger girl is in kindergarten. While every parent must want their children to live happily, confidently, and healthily, and then they grow, develop properly. But then after children go to primary school, we have to give up on these hopes because they have to spend 7 hours sitting and not running around so they could follow school life and rules, and then when they get home they have to do their homework and study. There are also extracurricular activities, and then they get home, they go straight to bed. The next day they repeat the whole schedule again, and this is even too much for adults, let alone children. So how can they be happy if there's not enough time? Of course they have to less time for play and sleep, and how can they be healthy if they couldn't cope with their homework? They are often criticized and they can't be confident. Why are children suffering so much? They have no free time, they work, they're busier than adults. Every day when I see my son doing his homework, I don't understand why at his age he has to learn something so difficult. And then before he learns something properly, he's learning something new again. So if the parents want their children to learn properly, either they become tutorial teachers, or if they don't want to ruin the relationship with their children, they send them to tutorial classes. So how much actually is learned from schools for children? Now, I'm a university graduate. I'm an adult. I tried doing the old TSA. I would think I have good comprehension, and I could manage my time properly. But I was not able to finish the whole TSA. I couldn't answer all the questions properly. And now there's the test for the improved TSA version. The same as almost like the old one. I don't understand why primary 1 students have to learn something so difficult. Our children are actually being drilled on TSA every day. At school exam, they are doing either pass the TSA papers or mock papers. The Education Bureau insists that the TSA could now called BCA could inform teaching and promote learning. That's why all pre-free students must take part. But as I said, how much of the BCA results actually reflect the level of teaching at schools? More is a reflection of the level of teaching at tutorial classes. So if you want to inform teaching might as well use the money for BSA on reviewing foundation education, providing more teacher training and improving the class ratio. That would be better. We should have regard to the differences of children so they are taught differently. Now, many young children would only start to learn properly at an older age. Why must we force them to go through this? Thank you, Madam Tai. So for the deputations in individuals, they've already spoken. Before the Undersecretary gives a response, I've received 2 motions so far. One is by Mr. Michael Tian. I'm sure you've already got a copy. Oh, sorry, it's not been handed out yet. Maybe the Secretariat will distribute the motion to members. The motion is on TSA and BCA. In particular, the anonymous or the named approach. The other motions just moved to Mr. Ted Hui. Mr. Eddie Ng insists on pushing through PCA, so it's a vote of no confidence in him, and the motions to condemn him too. The motions have to do with the BCA, so after we finish our discussion, then we'll vote on the motions. So members, you may wish to take a look at the wordings of the motion. Yes, Ms. Claudia Mo. You mean after the whole discussion is finished? You mean for this session or for all the sessions? After the end of session 3, we will then deal with the motions. We're now talking about BCA, but the motions have to are on the BCA itself. So we have to wait till all the deputations have given their views today before we can handle the motions. Dr. Fernando Zhang. If I move a motion that is not relevant to the following sessions, is a matter of whether the Secretary attends the first session, because the session is over. Can we vote on that motion earlier while we still have a quorum? If your motion has nothing to do with the BCA, but rather about the Secretary attending only one session today, then it has nothing to do with whether we completed the whole discussion, so I think we could deal with that earlier. But we must first have the motion. Mr. Ted Hui. My motion is on the Secretary for Education. It's a vote of no confidence in him because he wants to launch the BCA. So I don't see why we can't deal with it in this session. Why must we wait till the third session? The motion has to do with how the Secretary deals with TSA and BCA, and that obviously is relevant to the whole discussion today. So before we listen to all the views and the response of the Undersecretary and vote on the motion, well, logically it's a problem, it seems. And also, Mr. Michael Tan has moved his motion, proposed his motion first, so that's why yours is next after him. Now, can I invite the Undersecretary to respond to the views expressed just now? And if members wish to speak, please raise your hands and the clerk would jot down your name. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would like to thank the deputations and individuals attending the session and for giving their views. We have listened to your views carefully, and in our upcoming review we will take into account your views. Perhaps I'll just say a few words here. Now, everyone who spoke expresses care and concern about children, whether they're able to develop properly, whether they can learn something in schools, and whether this is the best approach, and so on. Well, so those are exactly the same issues we are considering all the time at the Education Bureau. About the various problems to do with TSA, including drilling. Perhaps, yes, this happened before 2015. In the light of views expressed in 2015, well, in 2016, we have, in effect, stopped TSA. And during that time, we conducted a review. So we asked some schools to voluntarily join a trial scheme. So for most schools, the TSA was suspended for a year. And last year, we did a trial scheme. And the review committee found that the outcome was most satisfactory because there was no longer drilling. And then in the various reports given to schools, we found that these reports could help schools in teaching and learning. And also we were able to provide the necessary resources to schools. Now some said that of course the outcome was satisfactory because schools volunteered to join the scheme, and that's why this year we are saying we would extend the whole scheme to the whole territory, and then we'll see whether the trial study or the good results of the trial study would also materialize for territory-wide scheme. Now, when we want to see when we extend the scheme to the whole territory, whether the outcome is exactly the same as that for the trial study, or is it the case that when this is launched territory-wide, things go wrong again. So that's what we would like to see, and that's why after the BCA this year, we would conduct a review before we decide how we should proceed with the BCA in 2018. That's all I'd like to say for now, Mr. Chairman. Perhaps I'll take members' questions later. Next, members' turns. Mr. Xiu Ka-chung, Mrs. Regina Yip, Mr. Leung Kwa-hom, Dr. Priscilla Leung, and Dr. Lau Siu Lai have indicated they wish to ask questions, so I propose 3 minutes each. We could extend the session a bit. Originally, the session is supposed to end at 7:50, but perhaps we'll have to extend it to 5:08 p.m. And if members wish to propose motions, please do so quickly. Mr. Xiu Ka-chung. Thank you. The butterfly effect of TSA and BCA. Well, you often hear this term, butterfly effect. In the Amazon forest, if some butterflies just flap their wings, 2 weeks later there will be a tornado in Texas. So that's called the butterfly effect. For TSA or BSA, it's just some starter dish, but it has immense butterfly effect politically, including. So we can't put up with anything. You have to criticize the government before they will do something right. So we can't just put up with this. Professor Mok Wu-ching left the committee, and that's an important sign. Professor Mok is a member of the review committee of TSA. She's also the director of the research center on assessment. She didn't oppose this at the, right from the beginning. She was hoping that BCA would be a much improved version, and she put forward various ideas. One of the ideas was to make a BCA anonymous, and it won't be done every year. But all these suggestions were not taken on board. That's why she left the committee. Well, it's like if we can speak out, we speak out. We can't, we stay silent. If we can't even stay silent, we'll leave. I think that's probably what she felt when she resigned from the committee. Now, what sort of views did you take on board when you went from TSA to BCA, or were you rigid all the way through? That is, from day one, you just kept to your first ideas and never changed anything. Maybe you wouldn't accept our proposed changes. What about changes proposed by others? Even if it's just a minor change, can you tell us what has actually changed? Now, whether I think the change for better or worse, but at least tell us what's changed first. What have you taken on board from the public and the committee? Under Secretary? Now, in the 2015 TSA discussion, there was a point often heard, and the parents had strong views about that. That is, drilling due to TSA has had an adverse impact on learning and teaching. So we did take on board that view. For the questions, we've made adjustment so that there will be less temptation for drilling. Mrs. Regina Ip, I heard the Secretary said many times for the TSA and BCA, and in particular BCA, is to assess basic competencies. The purpose is to inform teaching and promote learning. But last Tuesday, I attended a briefing session by over a dozen school heads. That's not the impression I got. Sister, a school principal, said that the schools are given so much public resources. Of course, the schools must be checked on whether they're teaching properly. And then there's another school head, Mr. Chen Kong, head of the Yan Primary School. He said this is a trick question, is to test is on weight, and so that's not just a trick question. So that means they're not assessing basic competencies. And then there are other principals who supported you, and they said after they joined the scheme, they can benefit from it, because after they've got the information, they can apply under the Quality Education Fund. So it's because the case that schools who take part in the voluntary scheme will get more resources. In our scheme, there's a point about support to schools. When schools receive the assessment outcome, we know in which area schools may need more support. And so therefore we provide the teaching and learning support. And if schools then come up with some schemes and then can apply, they want to apply under the Quality Education Fund, we'll consider that too. But it's not because the school has taken part in the tryout study, the school is then given priority under the Quality Education Fund. No, that's not the case. Now, I wasn't at that particular briefing. You mentioned the remarks of two principals. Well, if a question is indeed a trick question, that's not our intention. Well, I'm running out of time. Let me say, School Principal Hong kept saying that the questions will be easier. Yes, in the past they were too difficult, now they're easier. But why must the questions be easy only because we criticize you? How can we trust you? Because things may eventually become distorted. So why don't you allow voluntary participation? We'll see whether things will become distorted. Of course, there are people who support you, then let them do it voluntarily. You don't need to do it across the territory before we have confidence in that BCA. Well, last year, the aim was to allow voluntary participation, and after we've seen the BCA findings, we believe we can try it territory-wide, and then we'll make a final decision depending on the outcome. Mr. Leung Kwok Hong? Me? Yes. Mr. Xiu Ka-ying mentioned something like the butterfly effect, but it means Chinese is actually, if it's just a minor difference, if it's a minor discrepancy, it makes a huge difference. Now, Aiden kept going back. Now, he shit and then he asked someone else to clean up after him. And he was just saying that what is the point of not naming schools? So he's going back on things. If you want to check how students do, you don't need the names of schools. And he said if the school's not able to use this for improving their work, they're not able to use the results for their own school, how can they improve their work? It's not what that sister principal said. So you are just suppressing people. And as schools drop from band 2 to band 3, and eventually a school is abolished. So you are bullying the weak. For the others, they have no problem. Of course, for the elite schools, people queue up to go to those schools. But for those who already made victim under the system, now they are living in more fear, and they need to do more drills. But then you are playing, saying the same thing over and over again. People tell you don't allow drilling, but you said it's just because schools drill on their own, do the drilling on their own. But I mean, if there's not a system, why would people drill? You know, Eddie, I think he's totally despicable. He left you to handle all this. Are you going to answer on his behalf? Schools need the results, so is it true or not? Where's he now? Tell me, where's he? Did he tell you where he's gone? Where's he gone for dinner? Tell me first. Don't let me catch him.
Where is he dining now? Can you tell? The secretary, after responding, I understand he has another official duty. Oh, he's accountable to LegCo. What other official duties does he have? You can read up Article 73 of Basic Law. Could you disclose what official duty he has? He was notified in advance. I know it's official duty, but I did not ask in detail. I know definitely it's an official duty. He's whining and dining. So we have received 2 motions, and I suggest that we deal with these 2 motions. And first of all, we have Dr. Fernando Cheung's and then Mr. Hui Jifeng's motion. So we will have 2 motions. Let's deal with the short ones, and it's related to Mr. Eddie only attending the first session of the education panel. So Dr. Fernando Cheung, you can read out your motion, and then Mr. Hui Jifeng can read his, and if necessary, we can have a discussion or move directly to voting. Dr. Fernando Cheung. Mr. Eddie was only willing to attend today, that is the 8th of May 2017 education panel first session of the meeting regarding BCA research. The hearing is important, and the Secretary has decided not to attend the 2nd and 3rd session. It is very regrettable, and we need to reprimand him. Mr. Hui Jifeng, regarding the Education Secretary, Mr. Eddie not being able to attend session 2 and 3, we need to put a vote of no confidence. Okay, any discussion regarding the wording of the motion? If not, yes. The Undersecretary. Well, this involves the Secretary. I need to state that the secretary knew in advance that the meeting would extend to after 6:30, but he already had a previous engagement. I need to point that out, and of course, how you would vote is your decision. But I need to point out that the secretary had an engagement after 6:30. Mrs. Regina Yip, Mrs. Yip, Chairman. Well, Mr. Eddie had met with me, and he explained the importance of TSA, BCA, but I think Ms. Chan had spoke more than him, so I don't know who is in charge of the Education Bureau. Is it the secretary or the technocrats? When I met with the school principals, they were in praise of Miss Eunice Chan, so I have doubts about Mr. Eddie, but since he's retiring, I don't want to reprimand him, so I'll excuse myself. I thought you were going to add your comment to that motion. Is it decisive? Oh, I don't want to. Okay. So, whoever wishes to stay here, it's their own volition. We do have a quorum, so we can vote. Those in favor of Mr. Fernando Cheung's motion, please raise your hand. The majority are in favor. Those who object, please raise your hand. So, I don't want to reprimand you. Mrs. Regina Yip has an abstention. Okay, Mr. Hui Zifeng, who wants to propose a vote of no confidence. Those in favor, please raise your hand. The majority. Those who object. Abstentions. Mrs. Regina Yip. So 2 motions are carried. Next. We continue with our Q&A. We have 3. Miss Priscilla Leung, Lao Xiulai, and Miss Lao Xiulai. Well, thank you, Chairman. I heard that in favor of TSA, BCA, and even voting for Disney is better for children. That is very touching. Have we really heard the kids' concerns? Do we understand children development? Kids between 0 to 10 years, even though they have a very speedy recall, but we need to teach them empathy, and we need to give them a happy childhood. Well, because after that age, it's very hard to develop empathy. They need to have a social environment to develop empathy. Drilling, you can do that later. Knowledge can be earned later, but happy learning and empathy, once you miss that window, it's gone. So even though I don't like Disney, but a happy childhood should not be displaced. So officials and parents should really speak on behalf of kids' needs. Now, regarding the Undersecretary, Mr. Young, he says that some schools participate in the BCA voluntarily, so he feels that we can have a mandatory territory-wide participation. But if we put it in down-to-earth terms, if one woman wants to marry you, does that mean all women have to marry you? Those who are willing, they have they have the condition and ability, but those who are not willing, they don't have the conditions. So, what's your logic? I've never seen anything so ridiculous. We have so many parents, teachers, and even children saying that they don't want to take the test, and why do you want to bulldoze it through? I'd like you to contemplate. Chairman, if Ms. Lau had taken note that since our discussion in 2015, we need some data, territory-wide data, regarding students' competency at different ages to help the whole of Hong Kong, the Education Bureau, to take a pulse of the chairman. He's misleading us. We don't want the coaching culture, the drilling culture. Now, if you allow me to finish, I was going to say that we don't agree with drilling in the 2016 tryout. We didn't see any drilling. Chairman, that is a hypocritical statement. Can I finish my statement without interruption? Chairman, I want to say that Ms. Lau quoted or wanted to say that I don't care for certain things. I disagree. Ms. Priscilla Leung, I do not wish to spend time on whether we should be reprimanding a secretary. I see the matter cannot be resolved just by having a new secretary. I know that we have some people who support the BCA. We have school sponsoring bodies, parents and school principals. I received messages from these groups, and I want to share that I feel the pursuit of test results and big data, are these the kind of people we want to train? I see a lot of university students, their jobs are not related to their degrees. We have kids in elite courses, they feel lost. So in this process, I feel the less tests there are, the better it is. Well, assessment does not necessarily equal the tests. I have two kids who had taken the TSA because they were the first, second tier, but now it's deviated. We now hear parents, better schools, they might like to take those tests. We hear parents saying that they have to take the tests so we can grade the schools. Why do we have BCA? It's because at primary 3 level you already want to categorize them. Otherwise, why we could have anonymous testing. I had paid tuition for individual assessment, but you cannot use the same test for all the kids. It's primary 3 is too young. Regarding primary 6, testing at primary 6, I have an open attitude, but primary 3 is too young. Why do you have to? Kids don't want to take the test. Why do you force it on the kids? I think we need voluntary participation. So I agree with anonymous testing. There are 20% that don't want to take the test, so why do you want to force them to take the test? I don't see the rationale for doing so at primary 3. Well, if it's anonymous, if we don't have the school information, the schools cannot compare their results against the rest of the territory. So you are grading the schools. I cannot allow follow-up questions. Next, Mr. Yu Chongyi. Thank you, Chairman. First of all, I'm not an education panel member. I've heard deputations, legislators, and officials. I feel that there is a consensus. That is, those in favor of BCA, whether it's a government or the legislators or the parents who want to take the test, the Undersecretary said that it was voluntary on the last occasion, so the results were very good. And the legislator also said that we should give them choice. Those who support BCA, they use a vaccination, they use a health check analogy. It's voluntary. Then you get good results. That's the consensus. Those who dislike the BCA, you should allow them to not participate. They don't need to criticize you of depriving their children of a happy childhood. They criticize there's excessive coaching. That's the consensus. The voluntary approach is the best approach, so you should continue doing that. So the question is, why do you make it compulsory for all schools to participate? You say that you need to compare the whole of Hong Kong. Now, I teach at university, and I can share some of my experience. All the universities have their own quality control. Our students' grades, compared to the rest of the world, we can conduct an assessment, but we rely on external examiners to. We do not require students to take a government examination to identify our students' abilities. We rely on external auditors and overseas experts. We look at the test papers, student responses, student homework. We don't force the students to take a government exam on the same day to assess them. So you should do it like last year. You should give people choice. There's no reason to force people to participate in your government tests. Okay, let's draw the line there, Mr. Hui Jifeng. Thank you, Chairman. I can't find anything more important than this hearing with the deputations. The Secretary said he would rule out the anonymous testing, the BCA, TSA. The core user are the schools. Schools will know how they perform against the rest of the territory. This is coaching, drilling. Schools give themselves pressure. Parents are aware of their performance, and ultimately the children have to bear this pressure. So, do we need a assessment at primary 3? Do we have to identify the school by name? If that is the Education Bureau's thinking, then you don't have any trust in teachers. All the schools want their students to perform well. All the schools know how well they perform relatively. So when parents apply to schools, they know what band the school is, and if the schools are publicly funded, they are accountable to the public, then all the officials and secretaries should be accountable to the public. So they use public funds to take a test, and they are under so much pressure. This pressure originates from public funding. Let me respond to a few points. We need to do it at the primary 3 level because studies find that learning discrepancies starts at primary 3. If we don't know their basic competencies in Chinese, English, mathematics, if we don't know it at the primary 3 level, it will affect it in the higher grades. So we need to know at an earlier stage. If you wait till primary 6, that might be too late. And second, why we cannot allow choice. Over the years, when you allow individual schools to take or not take a test, then the statistics are skewed, and it might not reflect on the overall performance of Hong Kong. So when we take territory-wide tests, we could take random samples, but if we allow discretion, then it might not be that accurate. Well, with random samples, it might not be comprehensive. So we had discussed this before. Thank you, Chairman. I announce this session ends. Thank you for staying so late. If you have further comments, you can submit them in writing. You can also save your submission. Please let's take a break for arranging the next session. We will commence at 8:15.